Well, thank you for uh, joining here and listening to our quick webinar on GSA Polaris Amendment 9. Our purpose here is to give you a short overview of the details of Amendment 9 relative to the pricing information that GSA is asking for, along with the basis of estimate. We're going to talk about labor rates. We're going to talk about a number of things. Uh, we're not doing this as a live webinar on purpose, mostly because the subject matter that we're dealing with is fairly concise, and I think once you look at the material, you'll agree with us that the approaches and the answers to this are fairly straightforward, and the number of decisions you have to make are pretty small. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here. I am joined today on this short presentation by my good friend and colleague Kimberly Hilton. Kimberly leads our pricing practice at R. Turner Consulting and is really the leader who pulls together all this data and gives us many years of GovCon pricing and contract experience. Kimberly, welcome. Give our listeners just a brief background on your history there.
Great. Thanks, Robert. It's good to be here today with everybody. I came into GovCon business development by way of my accounting career. So I did pricing development for manufacturing, and I have a commercial construction background. But I came into GovCon about 10 years ago, maybe a little more, probably closer to 15 actually, and started digging in to federal acquisition regulations and the GovCom way of doing things. And um, it's just grown and grown
Yeah, it's been a
for
fun
me.
ride. Yeah, and Kimberly's also been a controller and a CFO for reasonably sized firms, and really brings to us a really good understanding of both the mechanics of pricing as well as how to build winnable pricing models, both for single award as well as large IDIQs. We've done this same approach going back several years with all the major GSA, GWACs, as well as some large agency IDIQs that we've done pricing models for. And so, what we've done, if you've been with us since we've been supporting Polaris, you will have seen the first revision of our pricing accelerator. So we've updated that with what GSA has brought to us with Amendment 9. So let's get into that, and then we'll talk about updates to our product that you can take advantage of, as well as how you might address Amendment 9. Okay, submission documents. So Amendment 9 is it's small business only. So if you did not bid the small business pool and you're looking at your Polaris Symphony portal and you don't see Amendment 9, do not fret, do not worry. That's normal. This has only been released for small business. They are still yet to release Amendment 9 for the woman-owned small business track, Hub Zone IDIQ, and SDVOSB IDIQ. So if you bid one of those three, you have not yet seen Amendment 9, and so you get a little bit of a break while everyone who bid the small business IDIQ has to respond to Amendment 9 by Tuesday, October the 31st. You see there at 4 o'clock. Okay, we sent questions out to many of our clients and webinar guests earlier this week. I hope you saw those and were able to get questions in by Wednesday. If you've still got questions, I'd encourage you to keep submitting them because this game is far from over. And protests may still be around the corner. So, in terms of submission documents, you need to update the JP9 price cost template. You need to develop a basis of estimate, which, if you have participated in Oasis Plus, you've developed a basis of estimate for Oasis Plus. This one's going to be similar with some changes in new requirements that are not in Oasis, so pay attention to those. And then, of course, there's an SF30. Okay, so that's Amendment 9. Comparing a Polaris and Oasis Plus. Kimberly, talk through this slide and help our listeners and guests get a sense of the differences here between the two different sides of the house on GSA. One side manages Polaris, and then professional services human capital is leading Oasis Plus, and these two things are similar, but they're not exactly the same.
That's very true. Yeah. So you do see two similarities between a Polaris and Oasis is the cost price template and the in the case of Polaris, the JP10, where they've given you a range of rates. Um, and they've discussed in the RFP how they came up with those numbers in a very obtuse way. You're really not sure how they did it. Um, but so the differences, though, are in Oasis for your basis of estimate, if your direct labor rate did not exceed the high range that they provided for the 20 labor categories, uh, you did not have to discuss that in your basis of estimate. For Polaris, regardless, you do have to discuss your methodology for deriving your direct labor rates. Uh, Also, I wanted to mention that you've already discussed this in your professional employee compensation plan that you've already submitted. So be sure to take a look at that and make sure that your basis of estimate that you submit for Polaris syncs up with the information you've already provided. Or if things have changed in your organization since you submitted that, then just discuss those changes. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. And I think it's important to talk about just for a minute here that in Oasis Plus for your basis of estimate, uh, if you picked a rate that was less than the high rate that GSA published in their JP10, uh, as Kimberly just said, you did not have to discuss your methodology for arriving at direct labor. Polaris Amendment 9 requires that your basis of estimate give a methodology for direct labor. So because the rates in the JP10, as we'll discuss here in a little bit as well, do not really line up very well with the other salary surveys, with Bureau of Labor Statistics data, etc. Just picking the high rate out of the Polaris JP10 is not really an answer because it doesn't line up well with methodology. And so that's really the tension that you kind of have to deal with on this thing. So JP9 cost price template is one of the things that we have to submit. So here's some instructions and a little bit of help in completing the JP9. Kimberly, you want to talk about this, and then we'll move on to basis of estimate.
Sure. The JP9 is actually pretty simple to complete. Once you've decided what your direct labor rates are going to be, and you've computed the indirect rates from either your previous completed accounting cycle, such as 12/31, 2022, if you're developing your rates from that data, or if you're developing your rates from the projected or budgeted financial data, or if you have DCAA rates. So depending on where you're getting your rates from, and we have a basis of estimate to address all three of those, um, you're just going to put your direct labor rates into the JP9. The ones that exceed the JP10 high rate are going to pop up in red, and you're going to enter your indirect rates and your profit. So once you do that, the worksheet will complete the fully burdened labor rates out for 16 years. So it is pretty simple, but you need to do your basis of estimate first so that you've landed on your direct labor rates and you've landed on your indirect rates.
Good. So let's talk about the JP10, these direct labor rate ranges that they gave us, and maybe here at some point too, we'll talk about some of the difficulty with this, Kimberly.
Well, right. They've added a new FAR to your RFP. So I'm going to talk about that first. Um, and this FAR is labeled the requirement for certified cost or pricing data or data other than certified cost or pricing data. And they've chosen alternate four. So this FAR has four alternates for a contracting officer to choose from on how they are going to evaluate price. And basically, they can do whatever they want. Once you read it, we've given you the FARs here 52.215-21 and also FAR 15.403-3. You don't have to read them, but it's always good to review the FARs. So they've added this FAR, and you're going to be accepting that, of course, when you sign the SF30. Um, we've analyzed these rates, the high rates, against uh, three salary surveys that we have refreshed um, for this very long list. I think it's 192 line items because you have junior, journeyman, senior, and SME levels that they asked for pricing for direct labor rates. The evaluation of the rates will be fair and reasonable based on your JP10 high rate. So they have really set up all the parameters. The government has done this for Polaris pricing. They've told you pretty much not to exceed their high rate because you may not be evaluated fair and reasonable. However, if you do exceed the high rate, then you have to provide a rationale in your basis of estimate. So want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, and I think it's important to note here that Kimberly, you've just pointed to the tension in this whole thing. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of the high rates beyond the JP10 not being judged as fair and reasonable, while at the same time the high rates on the JP10 don't necessarily reflect an accurate view of the marketplace, and you could put yourself at a little bit of a disadvantage by choosing those when perhaps specific labor categories actually have higher rates out in the market, as illustrated by the various salary surveys. So that was really the basis of our question that we submitted to everybody uh, earlier in the week.
Oh, Robert, I wanted to mention another thing here. These proposed direct labor rates that you're going to complete your JP9 with need to be effective June of 2024. So I wanted to let everybody know that we have adjusted the salary survey data that we collected with the BLS ECI escalation rate that they publish every year. So keep that in mind as well. That they haven't really told us how they came up with rates for 2024 in the RFP. But what we do know is that the salary survey data that is in Bureau of Labor Statistics right now is from a survey that was completed in May of 2022. So you know that there's at least needs to be at least two years of escalation on those BLS rates coming into this.
Wonderful. So let's talk about choosing these direct labor rates and what we're recommending to folks at this point.
Great. So I do recommend that you take you scrutinize this labor category list and cross-reference that list with um, comparable labor categories or job titles that you have on your payroll right now and compare those rates. Uh, Obviously, if you have a higher rate for one of these couple of these labor categories for current employees, you can justify that higher rate and point to your payroll and your current employees. And I would actually augment that with either a paid invoice for that labor category or a cutout from your database on your employees. Okay, so that's one thing that I think you should do. The next thing is you should look at the data that we provided from BLS, Salary.com, and Robert Half International. So Robert Half International, I'm going to start there. They have pretty high rates, and but they don't provide anything beyond senior. So we don't have SME rates from Robert Half. And the published data right now is for 2024. So there is no need to escalate the rates that we collected from Robert Half International. Salary.com, it's very reliable data, and the government does look to it um, to have an idea of what kind of price they're going to receive from GovCon when they put a solicitation out. They usually know about how much money they're going to need um, from congressional appropriations. So they look at salary.com, and so do we. And that's why. So salary.com is we're considering all the data fresh, so that means it's 2023 data. And so we put a 1 year escalation on that to bring it up to 2024 rates. And lastly, we pulled the data from Bureau of Labor Statistics, which I mentioned a moment ago, needs 2 years of escalation in order to hopefully bring all the rates into an adjustment that looks normal when you look across each labor category. But we find that it doesn't. We have, what is it, Robert? 60% of the labor categories from our other sources are higher rates than the JP10 rate.
Yeah, it's
It's
actually
like a
worse. It's
30 to
actually
60.
worse
Yeah.
than that. It's 67% of
Yeah.
our of the labor categories. Our salary survey rates are higher than GSA provided at the
Mm-hmm.
JP10.
Yeah. Yeah. And so really, it's my opinion that since the government is setting the bar for fair and reasonable, that the government should also demonstrate the calculations that they use to manipulate the data that they pulled from Bureau of Labor Statistics. We hope that they'll be more transparent about this if they continue to use this process to evaluate pricing. But right now we're sort of in the dark because they just started this with Oasis, and now we're looking at the exact same documentation requirement for Polaris.
Yeah, and
Is there anything else, Robert,
I
that
think
you'd
it's
like
worth
me to mention?
yeah, I think it's worth mentioning here as well, Kimberly, that we found the same problem on Oasis that we're finding on Polaris. The JP10 salary rates that GSA released for Oasis Plus were really no better and not in any better shape than what they're releasing for Polaris on Amendment 9. They claim to
100%, Robert. Yeah.
pull them from Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yet when we go and do that same database query at BLS, what we find does not align with what they published on the JP10. And so it just raises a lot of questions. The easy route is just to pick the high rate from the JP10, put it in the JP9, add your indirect rates, call it a day. But then they ask you in the basis of estimate to give the methodology for your direct labor rate. Well, just saying that you pick the highest rate from the government is not necessarily a methodology. Um, so we've written, as you've kind of mentioned earlier, uh, three copies of our basis of estimate to support uh, projected rates, accounting system rates, and forward pricing rates from DCAA. Um, but that's just on the indirect side. When you're talking about direct labor, How do you arrive at direct labor? Which salary surveys do you use? How do you factor in market rates? How do you factor in existing employees and existing contracts? Though that's the kind of information that goes into your methodology for your BOE for direct labor. And uh, just picking the high rate that the government gives you on the JP10, that's not a methodology. Kimberly, did I describe that problem accurately enough?
You did, and that's exactly right. Choosing the government's high rate is not a methodology. And I don't think the government would accept it as a methodology. And you run the risk of going down that road where the government is fixing prices. So we highly recommend that you maintain your methodology. And if your rate exceeds the government's JP10 high rate, then it's going to be notated in your basis of estimate in a table. That is the remedy. It's we feel very confident that this is a good strategy for your pricing for Polaris.
Great. So in our pricing accelerator, we're including all of this information. So we're going to give you 2 copies of the JP9 template with the labor rates already pre-populated. One copy is going to have the high rate from the JP10 for all 192 labor categories. And then the other copy is going to have the highest rate from either the JP10 or the salary surveys that we've pulled. Kimberly's mentioned those salary surveys. Robert Half, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Salary.com. So that workbook with all of those rates is going to be included in the pricing accelerator, and all of that is updated. We've gone back out to each of those data sources and pulled new data since we started working on Polaris many months ago.
2022.
2022, yeah. Right? Yeah, a couple
Yeah.
years ago. So given that it's almost 2024, we have also, as Kimberly mentioned, we have escalated these rates where we needed to. In some cases 1 year, in some cases 2 years. So in our salary survey sheet or workbook, you'll see current 2024 rates that you can include in your JP9. We've also included a template for your basis of estimate. And we've not just given you one, we've given you 3. So that you can pick the one that fits your company scenario on how you build up your indirect rates. Do you just pull data from your accounting system? Are you doing projected rates based on future growth assumptions? Or do you have DCAA approved indirect rates, forward pricing rate agreements, etc.? For each of those 3 scenarios, we've got a basis of estimate template. So again, 3 BOE templates, 2 JP9 templates already filled out, and then a copy of the salary survey. That's what's included in the pricing accelerator. Along with this webinar or kind of short presentation, we hope that this is of help to you as you're figuring out how to respond to Amendment 9. If you have additional questions or you'd like to engage our team to help you complete or work through your questions, just reach out to us here on the website. You'll see a facility to do that. You'll see our email address as well as I think there's a connect button probably on this page that you're looking at. Thank you for your time. This is our contact information here. And if we can be of any further assistance to you on Polaris or any other single multiple award contract work that you're working on, please let us know. We'd be happy to help. And we thank you for your time today.